Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Confessions of an Autism Mom. This week, I have another amazing mom. Her name is Marlene, and she has a foundation by the name of Helping Swans. We are going to talk to her and get her story. I follow Marlene on Instagram, and she shares her story all the time, and it's an amazing, beautiful story. So she's going to share with us today. How are you today, Marlene?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course, and thank you for coming on. So let's go ahead and hop on into the episode today. Can you go ahead and just start off by telling us about your journey and how everything started?
Well, my name is Marlene, and I am a mom of a 12-year-old. My last child is 12 years old, and he is on the spectrum, along with other medical conditions that he has. But my journey, I want to say, started the day I delivered. I had him, what I thought was going to be a very typical delivery, unexpected challenges. And because of those challenges, he ended up spending weeks in the NICU. And because of that, we were told he needed to see a geneticist. And that was news to us because during the pregnancy, there was no concerns. So once I knew there was a genetic factor as a possibility, I became a super hyper vigilant mom. And that was pretty much the start of our journey. I can remember from the first day he came home, I was just hyper focused on everything he did and everything he did not do.
Okay. And what signs did you see originally once you all got home and everything that was pertaining to autism?
I knew, having been a previous mom before, that babies, infants, they will smile and giggle. Maybe it's not right on cue, but they will make facial movements and things that will indicate they're laughing or having fun or going through something like a good facial expression. And he had no facial expression at all. It was just like a blank stare. Um, babies recognize their parents no matter what. And I can spend the night away, 2 nights away, 3 nights away. And it was just like, okay. It was no crying for feeding, no crying for soiling. Like I did things just to test the limits of, let's see how long. I'm not going to feed him on the fourth hour. I'm going to wait to see when he actually cried. He would not cry for food. He wouldn't. He was just like, zoning into maybe a TV or whatever was going on around him, but just in his own world.
And what age was this?
This started in the first year.
In the first year?
By yeah, by 18 months, I had gotten him evaluated for the first time.
Okay. And I know you said your road to the diagnosis wasn't easy. Could you tell us about that process?
Yes. So as I just said, I got him evaluated for the first time around 18 months. He was walking by 1 years old. He was doing other things. He didn't sit and do quite things that are more physical. So I attributed more of the physical stuff towards genetics, right?
Okay.
And at this point, we've done genetic testing. We don't have an answer for genetics. So therefore, no doctors or specialists were concerned about autism. They were like, no, why are we worried about autism? We need to worry about what he has genetically, which makes sense. But for me, I know early intervention is key. And by 18 months, he wasn't saying any words at all. He still didn't recognize me as mom. Forget about saying anything verbally. It was just like whoever's in front of me is in front of me. I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to be happy about it. I'm just going to be. He was the type to line up his toys. He
Okay.
was a jumper. His stimming was jumping. So we went through about 3 or 4 play yards before his second birthday because he would break them from how much he was jumping in the middle. The crib, same thing, the jumping a lot.
Okay. And how did you feel? How did that make you feel?
Um, I felt like I was going crazy. I felt like I knew it was autism, but I didn't have the diagnoses. He didn't get the diagnosis at the first appointment at 18 months, I was told no. Actually, I was even like mocked at for buying a trampoline, and it was like okay, yeah, okay. Doing typical things. Oh, let me guess, your child is lining up the toy, so you think he's autistic. So those are the things I got from medical professionals. And it could have shattered me. I just figured, okay, how do I keep writing things down? I journal my life away and take notes on everything. But I also was in a marriage that at that time, no longer, but I was also in a marriage where it was very like single parent when it came
Okay.
to medical, because at that point he was in denial of what I was seeing. Like we were looking directly at him and it was just like, no. But
Mhm.
over the years, we realized it was just a difference in being educated on it. And I say that
Right.
because while I was thinking symptoms, your first response as the caregiver is to start researching, reading, Googling, watching videos, getting other feedback from other parents, listening to podcasts and watching them. But if there's a parent that's in denial, they're not going to Google, they're not going to reach out. So they're not going to see the things that I saw. So that was hard.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And you say your son is 12. When he was 12, was it a lot of information? And, now we have social media and people like you and I, we're always advocating. Was it like that when he was 18 months?
No, absolutely not. I was familiar with autism because I had a dear friend of mine that had two autistic children. And I always say that that friend of mine has been placed in my life to like prep me because they were things, she had two kids that were like completely different, but both on the spectrum, you know? So I kind of got to see the best of both, like, on how, level three can be, or maybe level one. Um, but for me, then it was harder. YouTube was your best friend. There were a lot of parents confidently or having access and time to get on here and just put it out
Right.
there. There was no 30-second shorts and clips, and it was just like a parent had to take out 12 minutes, and that's with editing, to just put their feelings out. And it was still, even 12 years ago,
Yeah.
looked and frowned upon. So it wasn't that easy for people. And it wasn't easy for new parents like me, which is what influences me to continue to put it all out there. Because even when you think your story has been told before, it really hasn't, because you haven't told it.
Right. And it's new to so many people. And like I say, your story is amazing. Do you mind sharing the other diagnosis that your son had?
Yes. So at 11 years old, he was finally diagnosed, which was last year. So we went 11 years without a genetic diagnosis. It's called Coffin Cyrus syndrome.
Yeah.
There's different variants, but the Coffin Cyrus syndrome, an example of that is autism spectrum disorder is the umbrella, right? So Coffin Cyrus syndrome is the umbrella, and then there's different genes that go under it. So the umbrella overall is about 500 in the world cases. It's an ultra rare genetic disease, but my son's case, we have under 30 in the world. That specific gene is called the BICRA gene, and this condition, Coffin Cyrus, affects every organ of the body, can affect every part. So it's been challenging, but there are quite a few of our kiddos that also have autism.
Okay. And so, what made you? I know you said you were familiar with autism due to your friends. The doctors kind of like frowned upon you when you mentioned autism. Were these the things that made you start treating and supporting your son yourself?
Yes. So when my son wasn't doing a lot of physical movement early on, I had to go against insurance and appeal denials to get physical therapy and speech therapy, because they said he doesn't have a diagnosis. And my theory is, okay, well, what if he goes his whole life without a condition because it hasn't been found yet?
Right.
You see, we found it at 11 now. So can you imagine if I would have just sat back with
Yeah.
my arms crossed and not appeal? I appealed 3 times. And appealing insurances is very intimidating, but I had nothing to lose. I don't have a big education. To be exact, I didn't even have a high school diploma. I had a GED. And that gave me the courage to say, you know, what else am I going to do? I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to figure something else out. And when he got denied autism, I was like, how do I get him behavioral therapy? He's level 2. At that time, I didn't know he was level 2. I knew he wasn't, you know, the highest level of support need. I knew he wasn't the lowest level. I knew he needed intervention. I started literally on Pinterest, on YouTube, working videos on how to talk, teaching sign language. I made my own PEC systems book from Walmart, bought my own laminator, cropped little pictures, Velcroed them myself. I mean, I did all of this at home, looked at the local colleges, went in like I was going to be a, you know, behavioral technician and try to get certifications where they could teach me. And then I'll go home and teach my son.
I love that. That is an amazing story to hear because appealing insurance, it can get really hard sometimes because I
Yeah.
work in insurance and some parents, it can get them to the point that they're totally discouraged and they're like, whatever, what's the next step or what's another option? If he or she can't have the services, like, what can we do next that will get approved? So I really love that because you are a true advocate for your son. Um, so you said that we can't just rely on therapists and educators. Can you unpack what that means for us as caregivers?
Yes. So, you know, I love the medical professionals. I love them so much that even one of my books is dedicated to them. But the truth of the matter is, they're only with your child for a very short period of time. I don't care if they're in an ABA 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. It doesn't compare to the amount of time a parent or a caregiver is spending with their loved one. And no one knows them like you do. So if they trust you the most, then you work with them even harder. So whatever it is that the doctor's recommending, and I'm not saying it's always going to be right, but whatever it is the therapist is working on, whatever it is school is working on, make sure you're on the same page. Come home and continue working at it because it's null and void if they're doing this, you know, 2 hours a day and they get home and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that because it's time consuming. I'm just going to, you know, not potty train. I'm going to put the diaper on him. And I say that very confidently because I'm still going through it at 12 years old. But it's, you know, it's a give and take. We're a team, a collective team.
Gotcha. And how do you balance listening to professionals and then trusting your gut as a parent? Because I know sometimes, like for me, I'm like, okay, I hear you, but I see what he's doing at home, so I'm not going to do that. But then I'm like, okay, they might be right. So how do you balance that?
For one, I always say be honest. Be honest. Like there's certain things that's hard to cut off. My son was in food therapy. If they're asking us to do certain things a certain way, the days that we slipped and we didn't, I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't give him the peas this week. It's so hard." And they will respect the honesty and they will find or reroute you another way and you kind of work together. But the first thing is, you know, y'all both have to be just as honest. And once you figure that part out, then you can say, okay, you know what? I'm not willing to do this. And everything for me has always been a two choice option, right? And the way I treat my child with two choices is either A or B. I've learned to give myself that same responsibility. All right, Marlene, you know, the doctors are saying we have to do this or this. That's it. Like we got to stick with it in order for it to work.
Gotcha. I love that. All right. Do you think society like sometimes underestimate us as parents and caregivers about how we show up for our kids? Because I know I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, you're only doing it for social media," and I'm like, nobody's just doing it for social media. Like this is our real life. Like you're only getting like a 7 to 30 second clip of it. So, do you think we get underestimated a lot of times?
You know what? I wouldn't use the word underestimated, and I might get a little bit of slack for this. And you know, it's my opinion. I think that we are not underestimated. I want to use the word we are irrelevant to them. And it's a strong word, but I want to say that because if you ask anyone, and you tell them, hey, this is what we're going through, this is our daily life, and you give them a breakdown of what it's like to be you as a caregiver, any right person in the right frame of mind is going to say, that's a lot. Like, I don't know how you do it, right?
Right.
But when you're not thinking about a caregiver because you're not one, because you're not affected or surrounded or a loving one, right? It's irrelevant. I don't really know. I know they watch their parent or they watch their kid or a spouse, but I don't really know what that feels like or looks like. I don't know what that is really day to day. They know what the definition of a caregiver is, but do they know the details? And until they don't tune in to, your podcast or channels like mine, they really don't see the ins and outs. And even in those little clips, I have a video that the amount of hate I received because I cried. Out of all my videos, I probably cry like 10 or 15 videos, and I have no shame in that,
Yeah.
but I was already in the recording mode, and I'm not going to turn off the camera because
Right.
it's making you uncomfortable. If I'm going to share my journey, I want to share it all. It's not always
Right.
smiles. It's a lot of heartache, a lot of crying, a lot of grieving, and I got a lot of, BS for that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm going to share the journey, the real journey.
Yeah. And I can respect that. And I hate that you got that backlash. Because I admire that about you because I haven't reached that point where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna show my tears. Like I'll talk about it, but I think the real emotion gets to the people that really want to learn and really want to understand us advocating. Like we appreciate those tears because they need to see it. It's not all like hunky glory, I think,
Yeah,
and for me, I try to stay on the positive side because and it's not that it's negative. I just try to stay more so leaning on like the good things because I want people to know that it's okay, you know. So I do
absolutely.
appreciate that, and I hate that you received that backlash. Because that's your journey, that's your story, and there's no need to, fake it. And I thank you for doing that. I want to talk about mental health. How do you handle your mental health?
Well, for starters, if you're unfamiliar with who I am, I have also my own disabilities, multiple disabilities, and been disabled for over 15 years.
Oh,
So I battle with physical, internal medical conditions that are not all visible at all. So that will put me in a slump. Um, there's days I can go 2.5 months great, and then I'm down for 3 days. Mentally, it is exhausting being a parent in itself in this era. Being a special needs parent, an autism parent, it is hard. The stares, the comments. My son is verbal now, and his stimming has changed. But in the first 4 years of his life, he was nonverbal, non-speaking, and he stemmed with humming. So I would take the critiques, the side eye rolls, the oh my God, all that into me. And I would break down in the shower. And there was just like those 5 minutes is where I would just let it loose. I wouldn't let my family know that I was going through it internally. So now I've just grown to say, I'm down. And I let my tears flow when they want to. Um, I don't hold back my emotions, whether I'm angry, happy, or sad. And that helps me mentally. And journaling has been like a huge thing for me. Just writing how I feel. I feel like, I don't know how you feel. You could have a, a huge family, or maybe you don't, right? But
yeah,
for example, I have a big family and I have a lot of friends and I have support system I do. But as a caregiver, I feel like I get tired of saying my story every time we get together because if it's five moms in the room, the conversation, no matter how you point the direction, always ends up on me because I'm the one going through 5 times the stuff that everyone else is going
right,
through, right? And that is exhausting. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm exhausting you as a friend, and I don't want you to think that your children are not as valued as my child is, but it's my reality and it just is consuming. So I learned to just write it down, write it down. And I have a journal called Confessions of a Caregiver. And you literally write it down, and it has like a caregiver affirmation on the top. And it's
Uh,
kind of like a release, like what stressed you out yesterday. Okay, write it down, get it out of the way. And that'll just help me feel better to go about my day mentally, give my husband a little bit of sanity because I've already gotten it out my system. And I don't need to hear anyone's response, but I got, to get it off my chest.
I like that. And I often feel like that, like, I don't like to talk about it with my friends a lot because I'm like, I don't want to consume you with what we have going on because this is my life and I'm comfortable with it. It's not a sad story. That's how I tell my friends, like, I'm not in pity. Like, I don't have to talk about it all the time. Like, I want to know what y'all got going on. If I need to
Exactly.
talk, I'll call you. But it's like I don't like to feel like I'm in pity. So I can
Hmm.
completely agree with that. How have you learned to recognize like your limits, like that? Okay, it's time to stop.
One of my favorite things when I speak anywhere is I tell people I learned the hard way. For me, was aftercare, not self care. I was burnt out, became burnt out, and my body, with my weak immune system, was shut down. While everyone is getting a cold or whatever it is once a year, I'm getting it once every 5 weeks. And I was in bed for 2 days in high fevers. And my body's just like telling you, like, girl, stop, like physically, mentally drained. And I'm like, I can't let it get to the aftercare. It needs to be self care. I need to stop, regulate for myself in order to help my son, regulate and live his day to day. So I just learned that I'm like on a time schedule where I give myself a few minutes every single day, no matter what that looks like. I don't care if it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes, but by myself, not with my husband, not with the kids, not locked in a bathroom crying, but even in my room, I have a little like another area of my house that I go to, and something like that. And that is enough for me, not doing my hair, my nails, that's cute. But that's for me, it's like part of grooming yourself, right? Our husbands go get a haircut because they have to, not because it's self-care. No, self-care
Yeah.
is something that stimulates you mentally and emotionally, not just the physical.
Yeah. And you mentioned you have other kids. How do you balance everybody and everything, like just as a wife?
Oh,
Because
it's so
that
challenging. It is hard. I have a blended family now and an amazing husband. I have a stepson, a bonus boy that happens to be the same age as my son. So sometimes it goes really great, sometimes it doesn't, but that's just siblings. And then my oldest is 25, and I'm a grandmother of two babies.
and you look good. And
Thank you.
can you give like single moms, because I have a support group and I know sometimes we talk about dating and if we'll find someone. Can you give us like a little outlook on that?
Yes, look at me. Don't lose hope. Don't let your ex lie to you and tell you ain't nobody gonna want you with your kid and your special needs kids, because there is somebody for everybody. Your focus is you and your child, and the right one will come. Okay. I am happily married. I've been with my husband going on 9 years, and he has taken my son to doctors, hospital, treatments for weeks at a time when I was busy and couldn't. So
That
where
is
there's a
so
will, there's a way.
amazing. I love to hear that because get a little nervous sometimes, especially like the dating scene now. It's a little different. So it's like I have put in my head that okay, I'm okay being by myself, but I don't want to
No,
fully like, push that off either. So
I say treat your person that you're dating and taking more seriously and willing to introduce them to your child.
mhm.
Um, you know your child best, what works and what doesn't. And just like you would introduce any friend to your child who wants to know a little bit more about what's it like to be in your child's, area and the likes and dislikes, what to do to make him comfortable or her, you would treat that person you're dating the same and let them do more than what they should because they want to do it.
Thank you for that. So let's get into your foundation, Helping Swans. Can you give us a little information about that?
Yeah, so Helping Swans Co is my nonprofit organization. A lot of people ask me why the word swans. So a little context is SWANS is an acronym for syndrome without a name. So my son was a child for 11 years without a diagnosis, and I was a lost mom, and I didn't belong to any group or category because my son was 7 when I got the diagnosis after 3 evaluations for autism. So I didn't belong to the autism community. I didn't belong to the cough and sirens community. I had nowhere to go. And I was just like, well, what am I going to do? So I started with writing a book. But then after I wrote my first book, I continued to write more. And I was just like, I need more fulfillment. Like my goal is to really help people, not monetize. So I was like, the only way I'm going to do this is if I start a nonprofit. What does my nonprofit look like? Every year it changes, it evolves in different ways. I started with, doing workshops or going to schools. I use my books as author readings and I donate them to the schools, to the children's hospitals, the libraries, different cities, different states, different countries. But then it's become a interpreter for the Spanish community, specifically reaching out to Title I schools and underserved communities, and just making sure that the resources are there. And I'm kind of like, I want to call myself in 2025 disability concierge. I have gone to doctor's appointments with parents and held their hand. I have, spoke in conferences internationally, like just to support the community and understand that you're not alone in this. Whether you have a diagnosis and you're new to this, or you've been in this for a long time, we need to still continue to build community.
That's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
how many books do you have?
I have 6 books at the moment.
And what are they? I know you have a journal for moms, and then you have your story, right?
Yeah, so I actually haven't done my story yet.
Okay.
It's crazy, but I have AJ Goes to Camp. It is I don't have all my books with me because I'm kind of out
Okay.
of some, but AJ Goes to Camp. This is 6 kids with 6 diverse kids. I want to be specific on that, but 6 different disabilities, including autism. And I know each and every one of these children, they have been involved in my life, from Down syndrome to to cerebral palsy, rare disease, muscular dystrophy, and hearing loss. That was my first baby. And then that led me to respecting, making it in Spanish for the Spanish community.
Okay.
Then I did AJ Goes to the Doctor. And that is where you can help teaching your child more about the medical profession and the care plan, and the hospitals are not so scary. Let's stop lying to our children when we take them to the dentist or the doctor and incentivizing them when they haven't earned it. Like, we got to go get checked. So that's what that book is about. And then I have All Siblings Are Special, and this is the blended family, how hard it is, how you feel like one child is special. Why does he get all the attention? He can never get in trouble, or everything has to go according to his dietary needs. Or so it kind of gives you a little bit of spiel on that. And Family for Life is a book that it is like spilling the tea on being a caregiver.
Okay. And where can we find those books?
They're all on Amazon. You can search my name, Marlene Soto. They're on Barnes and Nobles online. Some are on Target and Walmart. You can find them online. And on my website, helpingswans.com.
And you all, I'll put that in the description for you all to be able to get on her website and find her as well. How can listeners support Helping Swans, or, get you to help advocate for them, things like that?
Reach out to me directly. I'm a person that I don't care what kind of questions you have. just reach out to me, whether it's on social media platforms. My phone number is blasted everywhere. I've had people call me in the middle of the night. I'm very open to like helping another parent out on my website as well. All my social media handles, my name is Mom Advocate Marlene. And I don't care what city you're in, country you're in, if you need help, advice, resources, I may not have the answer, but I'm willing to help you find the answer. And definitely to collaborate, any opportunities. If we have funding, we will get there. If you have donations, we need it.
Okay. And I will keep that in mind. My next question is, you mentioned that you did not get your son's autism diagnosis until 7, but you knew. What advice do you give moms who are like currently waiting or the doctors are kind of like nudging them off to the side? What advice do you give them?
I would say that note taking is crucial. Following your instinct, writing down the notes, seeing if you're seeing a pattern. It could be a 2 to 3 time situation, but is there a pattern? And symptoms vary with all kids, right? So is it a meltdown? Become familiar with things that are not just autism, but things that kind of co-occur, like ADHD or maybe oppositional defiant disorder, ARFID, which is, avoidant restriction, food intake disorder, sensory processing disorders. It's a lot and it sounds like a lot, but if you become just a little bit familiar with each of these things that co-occur with autism very frequently, you can kind of say, you know what, the whole time I was thinking it's autism, and now maybe it can be this, and put yourself on a wait list. And when you don't get the answer, you feel comfortable, go out for a second and third opinion. It took me 3 times and a whole relocation to the state of Georgia. So,
I'm glad you were able to come here and get what you need. And for the moms that are just exhausted and tired, because I know me, I'm like, take care of yourself. But some people are like, I don't have time. Like, I don't have time to sit to journal. And I get it. But what advice do you give those moms?
get therapy for yourself. We're focused on putting our children in therapy, but get therapy for yourself. You don't have a sitter while you're in therapy, use respite. I know too many parents that never use their respite. If you don't need it, that's okay. I'm one of those parents that I'm very fortunate to have the help and support that I need, that I've haven't had to use it. And I refuse to use it because I want to make sure that the parents that need it have it. But if
Mhm.
you're that parent and you need it, even if you're in a marriage like I had and been in the past, and you need that break, use the
Okay.
respite, get the therapy. You don't need depression, doesn't need to be your title to see a therapist. No one loses anything by seeking more help. We only gain things, we don't lose anything.
Right. And our last question, because this was a beautiful interview. Like you have given us like so much
Thank
advice
you.
from love, from family to advocating, where people can find you, your amazing books. What is your confession as an autism mom?
I don't have it all together. I fall apart every 2 days. I I grieve. Grieve is forever. You're not going to get over the grieving. It just changes in cycles, and you'll, sorry about that. You'll learn um that your journey is just your journey, and I've had to learn that. I can't compare myself to other moms or dads or who's doing what, and your child is different, and because your child is different, your journey looks different. So grace
And
over
thank
guilt.
you. Okay. And thank you for that about the grief, because I grieve a lot, but I've learned to become okay with it, and that it's a part of the process, and that I'll probably forever grieve, but it's okay. And I think a lot of people they get grief confused with, oh, you don't love your child, or you want your child
Mm.
to do something else, and that's not true at all, actually. So thank you for mentioning that. So this wraps up our episode. Can you tell everyone where they can find you again on all platforms, your website, everywhere that you want them to know that you are? And I'll also place it in the description box.
I am Mom Advocate Marlene, and that's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And you can also come to my website directly, and that is www.helpingswans.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marlene. You are truly the definition of a true advocate.
Thank
Learning
you.
your story outside of what you post has been amazing. And thank you for being honest. Because some people act like they have it all together, and you were completely honest about how you said sometimes you fall apart, like you don't have it all together. And I do appreciate you for being so transparent with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Of
I appreciate
course.
you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for coming on. So, you all, that is the end of our episode for today. I will place all of Marlene's information in the description box, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, and make sure you all follow her and support her with Helping Swans Co. And if you need any help from her, please reach out. She said she's here to help with whatever way you need. So, please take advantage of her help. Not literally take advantage, y'all, but say she's offering it, so take it. So once again, thank you. And everyone, will see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.